Hello, fourth grade. I am here with chapter 21 of Beyond the Bright Sea. When the ferry tied up at the dock, I was tempted to stay on board and wait for the return trip. The sight of that sailor who looked so much like me might be a better answer than anything I would find in New Bedford. But the answer I wanted and the one I needed were two different things. I would do what I had come to do. Now that I had reached the city, though, I was no longer so eager for it. Ash had been right. Even before I stepped foot ashore, I was startled by the place. It reeked of whale and waste. All along the dock there were vast pens of barrels covered with seaweed and hundreds of bales of cotton waiting for the mills. Men everywhere, of every color, stripped to the waist, labored in the sun. Horses worked alongside engines, alongside people, alongside a harbor afloat with trash and oil. In the distance, factories smoked their pipes. Past the docks, tall buildings and long, straight streets. Miss Maggie had told me about automobiles, and I had seen some pictures of them, but the ones I saw here, their fumes and rumble, the blare of their horns, amazed me. I didn't see a tree anywhere. "You comin'?" a deckhand called to me, and I realized I was the only passenger still aboard. "I am," I said, hurrying past him and down the gangway onto the dock, where I stopped short. Nothing so far had alarmed me as much as the sight of a black dog, boils riding its back like a spine, a rat as big as mouse clenched in its teeth. No one else gave it a second look. I didn't know where I was going, so I simply went. I hurried to catch up with the other islanders who'd come for business of their own. "Hey!" I called to one of them, a farmer, Mr. Cook. He turned. "Off on another grand adventure, are you, Crow? Saving the bird keeper wasn't enough for you?" "Do you know where the orphanage is?" I asked him. "Ain't no orphanage in New Bedford," he said. "Not anymore." And I cursed myself for thinking I could do this without any planning whatsoever. The city felt like a fortress, huge and unfriendly, and I had never felt so small. "But where it was, that's still there," he said, and I took hope. "What do you mean?" "Brought my mother there when she was sick, to the hospital. And just by there is an old building that used to be the orphanage, part of St. Luke's now." He pointed away from the docks. "Go on up Union, left on County, right on Allen, and be quick, Crow, it's a long walk. And there's only one ferry back to Cuttyhunk today." It felt odd to be wearing shoes in June, but I was glad to have them since the streets were sharp of bits of glass and metal, filthy with dust and dreck. Everyone walked so quickly here, nobody saying much to anyone else, all around them in a cloud of commotion. The windows of the shops were full of things I couldn't imagine ever having, and the reflection of the passerbys and the street full of cars made those glimpses of another life seem distant and insubstantial, like dreams. I watched for County, crossed Union to get to it, dodging cars and trucks that honked at me. Watched for Allen, crossed again more carefully, and then took it straight up, block after block, looking for St. Luke's. I was hot and sticky, my feet hurt. I just wanted one tree and a small patch of shade or the ocean. Better yet, I was hungry for my pocket lunch. Too early, though, to eat what I had, or I'd have nothing left when I needed it most. And suddenly I was at the hospital. There was no mistaking it. It was huge and beautiful in its own way. I felt like a stranger, a sore thumb among these city people, but no one paid the least bit of attention to me as I climbed the stairs and ducked through the big doors of St. Luke's. Here was a city within a city, bustle and clatter, sour smells overlaid with alcohol fumes, loud shoes, and somewhere a woman crying. And I had too many choices and no idea how to make one. A rising sense that I was on a fool's errand until a young woman at the desk said, "Can I help you?" She motioned me closer, curiosity plain on her face. "Are you lost?" "No, but I've never been to the city before. I'm looking for what used to be the orphanage," I said, and then quickly corrected myself. "Really, someone who can tell me about a boy who used to live there." The woman examined me more, quizzical, yet not quite smiling. "Well, any child who ever lived here hasn't for years." I nodded. I didn't expect to find him, just someone who could tell me about him. "I haven't worked here long enough to help you," she said, "but there are a few people in the wards who've been here since then." She gave me directions to the nursery. "You'll find Mrs. Pelham here. She helps with the babies now, but she used to work in the orphanage. Start with her. If anyone can answer your questions, she can." I made my way through a maze of corridors, out through a door into a yard, with finally trees across the yard, and the street beyond, and up the walkway to the steps of another building. not as big as St. Luke's proper, through the door, down a corridor, and up a flight of stairs to a ward where I could hear babies crying. "Can I help you?" asked a nurse coming out of the nursery just as I meant to go in. Her uniform was so white it made my eyes hurt. "I've come to see Mrs. Pelham," I said, not trying to sound as uncertain as I felt. "Well, you can't go in there," she said, looking me up and down as if I had fleas. "But I'll see if she can come out here for a minute. What's your name?" "Crow," I said. She frowned at me. "Like the bird?" "Like the bird," I said. She raised one eyebrow but went into the nursery and moments later returned with an older woman in tow. "This is Mrs. Pelham," she said, and then swept off down the hallway like a great white goose. Mrs. Pelham's face was old, but she moved like someone younger, and when she smiled I could see that her teeth were still strong. I wondered what had mapped her face like that. She peered at me, her brow furrowed. "Do I know you?" "No," I said. "Then what can I do for you?" she said. "They told me you used to work at the orphanage." She nodded. "Yes, I did, for years." I hadn't expected such luck. "I'm trying to find out about a boy who used to live there. His name is Jason. He came from Pennakees Island when he was just a baby. Do you know him?" Mrs. Pelham stood up straighter. She wasn't much taller than I was, but she suddenly seemed formidable, and every trace of curiosity in her eyes was suddenly gone, replaced with something else. "You're here about Jason?" she said. She looked not angry, quite, but serious. I nodded. "This is a ward for mothers and their babies," she said, "but it used to be where the orphans lived. It was not a bad place. The corridors were wide, the ceilings high, it was clean with lots of windows, but it was not a home. As I stood there, I thought of the cottage that Osh had built, so small, so crooked, the sound of rain on its roof, the sight of Osh stirring the fire, the amber light it made, the shadows flittering on the walls. "Did Jason live here?" She pointed. "In the room at the end there." "By himself?" She sighed. "Why do you want to know about him?" "I live on one of the other Elizabeths," I said, "by Cuddyhunk, and I wasn't sure how to make my long story short enough. It's possible that I have a brother named Jason who was sent here, and I'm trying to find out what happened to him." Suddenly, as if I had said something warm and kind, everything stern about her softened. She closed her eyes. Her lips trembled, her hands and fists beneath her chest, bowed her head. "Oh my," she whispered, "oh my." I sat beside her, and when she didn't move away, I liked her very much. "Mrs. Pelham," I said, "are you all right?" She opened her eyes and nodded. "I am," she said. Her hands fell into her lap. She turned to me and smiled a little. "It's just that we gave up all hope of ever finding a family for Jason, and now a family has come to find him." Okay, left you on a little bit of a cliffhanger. Let's see. I want to know, how do you think Jason felt living on that, in that orphanage, all alone, not many people willing to help him? How do you think that felt? I hope you guys have a wonderful night and a wonderful weekend, and I'll see you on Monday. Bye, Adams.